Today was the day. Today was the day when I would finally be able to help the mayor set up the fair. Despite being on about 5 hours of sleep, I was ecstatic. Waking up to that obnoxious sound of my alarm at around 4 a.m. in the morning, or around 4 in the morning, was absolutely miserable. I shut it off through my grogginess and immediately hopped out of bed. I showered, got dressed, and then started walking to the fairgrounds. I didn't ask my parents to give me a ride to the fairgrounds because it was so early. I didn't eat breakfast since it wasn't important to me. I was just too excited to go to the fairgrounds. Because it was summer, the morning hours weren't too cold or too hot. Just perfect. After around an hour of walking, the sun started coming up and I saw the fairgrounds coming up in sight. I felt a pulse of excitement rush through my body and I wanted to get there as soon as possible. I picked up my pace before I stepped right into the large grass pasture. The grass was moist due to the sprinklers. I looked far ahead of me in the morning sun on the eastern horizon, illuminating the sight of what looked to be Adeline, Christopher, Joshua, and Mayor Xavier. Or illuminated the sight of what looked to be Adeline, Christopher, Joshua, and Mayor Xavier. Adeline noticed me started to run to me, her dress swaying in the light breeze. "Hi, Leo," greeted Adeline, her dress dotted and her hair up in a ponytail. "What took you so long, slowpoke?" "I had a walkie," I replied. Adeline chuckled. Why couldn't you have asked for a ride?" she asked. "Well, maybe because it was 4 in the frickin' morning," I groggily said, "and I don't want to wake up my parents." Adeline gave a sly eye roll. "It doesn't matter. They would have gone right back to sleep after they dropped you off," she jested. "No, they wouldn't have given a ride," I sighed, wanting to go back to sleep. "Well, shut up for a moment so we can head over to where Christopher and Joshua are," Adeline said, turning around to run back to where the group was. I slowly started following Adeline. Adeline was a hard person to get along with, or maybe she was hard to get along with because I was sleepy. Whatever it was, I still hold up to the belief that Adeline is hard to get along with. Anyway, I followed Adeline over to where Christopher, Joshua, and Mayor Xavier were standing. Christopher and Joshua were wearing some shorts and a t-shirt. Those were the typical clothes that they would usually wear during the summer. Mayor Xavier dressed up very fancy in a tuxedo, or was dressed up very fancy in a tuxedo. He had the most authentic smile plastered on his face. "Mayor Xavier," I exclaimed, not able to hold back excitement. Mayor Xavier tilted his head toward me. "Hello, Leo," he said in a pleased tone. Nice to see you again." "So, what are we here for?" Adeline asked. "To help set up the fair, obviously," Mayor Xavier laughed. "And how are we supposed to do that?" Adeline asked, a slight smirk appearing on her face. "Well, you're gonna help us with setting up certain buildings and set up the power generators to help light up this fair and make it look magical," Mayor Xavier said. That seemed complicated for whatever reason. I took a very quick glance around and noticed several concrete blocks standing still in the grassy pasture. Stacks upon stacks of logs and cinder blocks stood adjacent to the concrete blocks. "This seems boring," Adeline said with a fake sense of exaggeration in her voice. "Then leave," Mayor Xavier said in annoyance. Adeline crossed her arms, her round eyes becoming slits as she narrowed them. "Fine, I'll stay," she sassily said. Mayor Xavier briefly paused and pulled out a rolled-up paper. He unrolled it as all of us gathered on his sides to see what the contents were. By the time he unrolled the paper entirely, we couldn't exactly tell what was on it. "What is all this supposed to mean?" Joshua asked, his tone rigged with confusion. I had questions to ask too, like the massive arrows pointing across the paper, the many rips and holes in it, but those questions were to forever sit in my brain. I'll explain it in simple terms since the ink on the paper faded away. Mayor Xavier started. "This basically states the rides you're all going to help set up with the other workers and the amount of time it may require." "So that means that one of..." Christopher was cut off by the booming sound of Mayor Xavier's voice. Let me explain and then you can ask questions," he snapped. I had never seen Mayor Xavier that mad before. That was definitely an eye-opener. "Since he can't read the paper and I can memorize the contents that used to be on here, I'll be assigning all of you guys certain tasks every couple of hours," Mayor Xavier continued. "And Christopher, you can ask your question now." Christopher looked blankly at all of us. "Forget about it," he murmured. "All right then," Mayor Xavier said. "I'll talk to you all privately and we'll get everything sorted out." As Mayor Xavier began quietly speaking to Joshua, the sun finally started to rise above the horizon to shine its bright light on our faces. It was absolutely magical. So, long story short, it was a long morning. I had the opportunity of setting up one of the most popular rides at the fair, the roller coaster. It was so much fun. They gave us a large blueprint to help set up the ride exactly how it was in the past. However, this came with some downsides. Setting up the power on the roller coaster, moving several pounds of materials, and nearly falling off some of the equipment at times. Yeah, it was stressful, but I had an excellent time. I don't know about the others. The mayor was nice enough to give us all a much-needed break at around 10 a.m., which was a good thing because I was exhausted. All I wanted to do was sleep at this point. When I closely examined what was once an almost bare grass pasture, so much had been done in the past several hours. Pathways had been built, massive tents were put up, and the base of the Ferris wheel was completed. Adeline helped work on that. It was truly amazing how much work had already been finished. Despite that, I already knew from a faraway distance that there was a lot more to complete. I felt at peace and completely forgot that Mr. Franklin ever existed. On other news, well, there wasn't really any notable news. I mean, Christopher was getting straight A's for the second semester in a row, and Adeline nearly failed the second semester. I'm glad about that. But other than that, there was nothing new. The roaming rumination of my mind was rather short-lasting because Mayor Xavier called for all of us to return to our original spot so we could continue setting up the fair. I honestly wasn't as tired as before, and for good reason. This was exciting to me. The roller coaster was finished. I honestly didn't think I did much in terms of helping, but I at least got the power working, and I helped drill one of the massive steel beams that was part of the roller coaster into the ground. By this point, it was around noon, and everyone was starving. I mean, I had gone about 8 hours without any food, and I'm sure that the others hadn't even eaten breakfast since we had to be here so early. When Mayor Xavier bellowed through the megaphone for us to meet with him, we all dropped our drills and nails and charged toward him. The construction workers seemed tiny bit confused, but who cares? Joshua was the first to reach Mayor Xavier, followed by Adeline, then Christopher, and then me last. I didn't have much motivation to run because I was so hungry. Are you guys hungry? Mayor Xavier asked. Of course we are, Joshua blurted out. I haven't even eaten breakfast yet, I followed on. I looked very briefly at Adeline and Christopher. They both stood still but gave a silent nod in agreement. Well, that's a good thing, because we're having a lunch shortly on the midway section of the fair, Mayor Xavier said. Finally, I thought to myself. What are you having for lunch? Adeline asked. We're having some spinach with grilled chicken for lunch, Mayor Xavier replied. Let's head over to the newly set up midway section of the fair. Right then, exclaimed Christopher and Joshua. I turned around, and from afar this place already looked like last year's fair. The only difference was that mighty Ferris wheel wasn't completely set up yet. I started to walk over to the midway section in a hurry. The tables around the midway section were just like the ones at last year's fair. Adeline, Christopher, Joshua, and I all took a seat on these lovely chairs. Birds were already beginning to perch on the empty tables, a sign of tranquility before the crowd arrived at the fair in a couple days. The benches were made of hard, cold stone, and the empty food booths surrounding the tables were painted in an assortment of colors ranging from white to yellow and a mixture of wisteria. While all of us waited for lunch, we were playfully bantering about who helped the least in setting up the rides. We all eventually concluded that Christopher helped the least, and there was plentiful evidence regarding this. About 30 minutes later, everyone happily rejoiced at the sight of Mayor Xavier's figure appearing out of the distance. He was holding a bag of food and a separate platter of food. Calmly, he walked up to the table and started unloading the contents from the bag. In the bag were 4 platters, which he gave all of us individually. The separate platter of food he was holding was reserved for himself. You guys may leave once you've finished your lunch, said Mayor Xavier. Thank you all for helping. We hope the best for your afternoon. I opened my platter in eagerness, and the aroma of that grilled chicken made me more starving than I originally was. The spinach was the only thing I didn't like in this meal, so I was just going to eat the grilled chicken. Everyone was swiftly indulging in their food, which I wouldn't blame them for. I'm sure everyone was starving. As I was nearly finished with my grilled chicken, I noticed an anomaly appear in the once completely clear noon summer sky. A thunderstorm was starting to form in the baby blue sky quickly, so I needed to rush home as fast as possible before I got all wet. I finished up the remainder of the grilled chicken before I slid the remaining spinach left on my platter over to Christopher, who was going on a binge-eating episode of spinach. He had already completely consumed all of Adeline's spinach and was nearly finished with Joshua's. I cleaned up my area before leaving in a hurry. The wind was beginning to pick up, an early warning sign that a bad storm was approaching. Leo, you're leaving this soon? Yelled Joshua. I looked back at Joshua right when a strong gust of wind hit my face. I yelled through the wind, a massive storm is coming. I have to head home right now before I get caught in it. How about you walk home with me? We can play some games together, Joshua shouted with an illustrious voice. I don't think I can, but later today maybe, I replied, still using a loud voice. After that sentence, I turned around and started walking home. Walking home, or I should say running home, I could see the many leaves being blown around in the strong winds, trees swaying violently, and the clouds obscuring the view of the charismatic skyscraper standing proudly in the center of Milwaukee. I saw lightning strike almost every second while I was running home. Once the rain started coming down, I began sprinting home as fast as I could. After 35 more minutes of getting soaked outside, I finally got to my house. The storm clouds created an overcast sky and a gloomy look in the time it took for me to get home. When it first started raining, there was still a bit of blue sky. When I saw my house, I was ecstatic. In a very frantic motion, I sprinted through the front yard lawn where water was beginning to pool up and knocked on the door. My mom was the one to answer, like usual. Goodness me, my mom murmured. You need to get yourself dried off. I stepped inside the warm house, the door shutting behind me. I noticed that I was completely soaked from head to toe. A pool of water was beginning to develop on the wooden floor. I saw my dad emerge from the garage, a drill in his hand. Oh my God, he gasped. Get him dried off. I can't afford to replace the floor from water damage. I rushed upstairs, my steps each making a rhythm on the staircase. I barged into the bathroom looking for a towel. I found one rather quickly and started drying myself off. I couldn't ever imagine that a storm could soak you that much. After I had dried off, I changed into new clothes and laid on my warm, dry bed. Rain was pounding incessantly on the window and thunder was booming across the city almost every second. Glad I wasn't in that storm anymore. I hoped the storm would let up soon because the fair was starting soon. I didn't know the exact date, but I know it had to have been soon. The next best thing I could do in the meantime would be playing my favorite game, the waiting game.